Very warm welcome to BBC News, and let's take you straight away to that breaking story now coming from West London. The London Fire Brigade are dealing with a huge fire in a residential tower block in West London. They were called to this just about 2 in the morning local time, about 2 hours ago now. This is Grenfell Tower, 23, maybe 24-storey block of flats in West Kensington. 200 firefighters at this scene, 40 fire engines. Most people, and most, in fact, of the people trying to help people still there, have been moved back because there are great concerns that this structure is going to collapse. Local people are saying residents of the tower are still trapped. Details at the moment not yet clear. Our correspondent Andy Moore is there. Andy, what is the latest?
Well, as you can see, the building is well alight. We've had an update from the fire service. They say it's alight from the 2nd floor up to the 27th floor. You may be able to see just at the bottom left-hand corner, there's a hydraulic platform with a hose that is focused on that one corner of the building that is not alight. And then in the last half hour or so, we have seen a person at a window there. We saw them once or twice. We don't know whether it's a resident or a firefighter, but it's in that area where that hose is being trained. So we can say that at least some people are still in the building. We don't know if they're trapped. We don't know how many people have been rescued from the building. We do know from the London Fire Service that they say in the early stages 2 people were treated for the effects of breathing in smoke, but we've had no update since then. We've seen debris falling from the building. We've heard the sound of explosions. We've heard the sound of glass breaking. The police keep on pushing back their cordons, moving members of the public for fear that the building might collapse. But as you can see, those firefighters, especially on those hydraulic platforms, are still in close proximity to the building, and I don't think they would be that close unless they were actively trying to rescue people to save lives.
But there is great concern from what you're saying, Andy, from the fact that everybody's been pushed back about the building collapsing.
That's right. That is a fear. As you can see, it's been alight now for something like 3 hours, right from the 2nd floor right to the top. Above the building, I can see this column of grey smoke rising into the air. There's the police helicopter overhead keeping a watch. I mean, there must be fears for the integrity, structural integrity of the building, and certainly the police are acting on the principle that better safe than sorry, that it's best to move people back. Certainly I was a bit close to the building earlier on, and there was ash falling all around, gently floating down at that stage. So there must be fears for the integrity of this building, that it could possibly collapse. You can see that one hose on the building. We can't see the base of the building from where we are, but from the 10th floor and above, you can see there is no firefighting going on. It's impossible to reach it. It's impossible to get hoses on it. So it's simply burning out of control, completely out of control, from about the 10th floor upwards.
Andy, I'm sure you can't comment on this as such, but it's probably worth putting it out there. We don't have the landlord's view on this block. Of course, at the moment, it's a local authority block. As I understand, it was being upgraded, but the work is supposed to have finished. What appears to be a local pressure group, the Grenfell Action Group, has been drawing attention in its blog post to what it calls dangerous living conditions here. Allegedly, the neglect and health and safety legislation, allegedly a poor safety record by the landlords. But I stress we don't have the landlord's point of view on that, and I'm sure they will have one. But the blog posts do suggest a serious fire in the tower block is likely, and they suggest a major fire in this very block was averted in 2013, when they say some residents experienced power surges allegedly caused by faulty wiring.
Yes, I mean, obviously, you know, we've heard some rumours to that effect here. But let me just bring you an update from the London Fire Brigade, who've issued this statement in the last few minutes. They're saying that 40 fire engines and over 200 firefighters have been called to this tower block. They say they received multiple calls. They say the fire is from the 2nd floor to the top floor of the 27th floor building. And we've got a statement from Assistant Commissioner Dan Daly. He says firefighters wearing breathing apparatus are working extremely hard in very difficult conditions to tackle this fire. This is a large and very serious incident, and we have deployed numerous resources and specialist appliances. They say their first call came just before 1 o'clock in the morning local time. That's over 3 hours ago, and they say fire crews from many local stations are here. They say the cause of the fire is not known at this stage.
Andy, thank you very much. You and your crew take care, of course. Now on the line is Usama Itani, who lives in the area and has been watching the fire. Usama, thanks for coming through to us. What have you been seeing and hearing? What do you know?
Well, around 1 o'clock, or a bit past 1 o'clock, we were awoken by the fire, specifically sounds of people shouting, "Help, help, fire, fire." And we looked out the window. I'm visiting relatives in the Ladbroke Grove area, and we could see clearly the tower block, Grenfell Tower, fully aflame on one side of the building, and all the way from the bottom to the top, just on one side of it. And we watched as that fire moved across the building, and we heard sirens, of course, as the emergency services flew past us to get there. And from there, we moved down onto the street, and we've been watching the fire from about 500 meters away for the past couple of hours. We've seen some evidence of life, people blinking lights and things like that within the building. And as your correspondent said, there is a hydraulic platform that has gone up towards what could be an area of the building where there are people actively inside. We saw a person just about 45 minutes ago on the 11th floor, standing at the window with his hand or her hand up to her ear, perhaps on the phone. I've also spoken with a few people on the ground who have come out of the building on their own accord, not evacuated per se, but have escaped from the building. 3 families, obviously shaken up, with very few belongings, just blankets and a bit of water, who have come out down the stairs. That was a while ago. From what we understand, we're hearing that the stairs are no longer safe for people to come out of the building using the stairs.
So, Osama, just to be clear, as we look at this pretty horrifying scene, you are seeing signs right now that there are people still inside.
Right now, I can't see any signs of life, but the hydraulic platform steers my vision towards that window where there was a person at the window, and the crowds here visibly and audibly reacted when that person appeared. I also have a relative on the other side of the building who sent me a video of a person halfway down the building on the outside, perhaps an emergency responder, because it looked like they had a pack or a canister on their back. That was about an hour and a half ago, and it was unclear what that person was doing. We saw hoses going up the side of the building, but they're really, I believe the top half of the building cannot really be put out at this point. They're just focusing on the lower floors. The fire engines that are responding can only really send water up about 6 or 7 floors, it looks like. But that hydraulic platform is up, it looks now, towards the 11th floor, perhaps the 12th. Some flats are still actively burning, especially on the side of the building that burned near the latter part of the fire. And we saw lots of debris coming off of the building. People are saying that it's the facade that was recently updated, and not necessarily part of the structure. Some residents here in the area saying the structure should be fine because it's concrete, but obviously that's just a supposition. We don't know about the integrity of the building, but most of what we've seen is cladding and other facade elements coming away. We've heard explosions, perhaps glass popping, TVs, appliances, and we've seen some debris flung outside of windows. And so far, the smoke continues to go from all sides of the building straight up into a large column of smoke.
Thank you for all that information, Usama. There was, I know several people have been pointing out this person who was seen at the window. There was talk at one stage, the fire service saying their only official figures were 2 people being treated for breathing in smoke. There was suggestions that person seen at the window was a firefighter, but it was clearly bareheaded, and it just seemed inconceivable that in the midst of that, any firefighter would have taken their helmet off.
Yes, to me, it did not look like a firefighter. I did not see a helmet. It just looked like a person wearing normal clothes with their hand up to their ear. They could have been directing the platform to that window because that is where the platform went to just a short time later. But when that person appeared, they were in the midst of an area of the building that seemed like it was just white smoke illuminated by fluorescent lighting. So perhaps that part of the building was safe enough for emergency responders to go into. But the rest of the building seems like there'd be really no chance for that to happen.
And we should say, Osama, the police now saying a number of people are being treated for a range of injuries from the fire, but no figures on that at the moment.
Right. We haven't seen anyone specifically being treated out here. We do know that the authorities have said, I believe, that people can go to the Latimer Christian Center, which is very close by, if they are survivors who need help. There was some concern for the buildings that are close by. There is a college, I believe, that is very close to the building that could have been, within range of debris. And we've also seen debris coming down very close to the hydraulic platform itself. So hopefully the emergency responders themselves are safe.
Well, Osama, thank you very much indeed. Just to look on the bright side for a moment, you have seen clear evidence of large numbers of people who've been evacuated.
Yeah, I mean, I myself have met 3 families who have come out safely, and I have heard reports from friends who live in the building that some of their relatives and friends have evacuated, although still remains to be seen. There are still some people unaccounted for.
And so, just to be clear, for people who know the British capital, I think we're near Latimer Road and White City, aren't we, in the West Kensington Shepherd's Bush area?
That's right. Latimer Road Station is the closest tube station to that building.
Thank you very much indeed for coming through to us and for all your information.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We speak now, I think, to Sophia, who's also been witnessing the blaze. Sophia, what can you tell us?
So I've heard from friends and from family members that some stories that are quite tragic. People calling from inside the building on their mobile phones, telling family members that they won't make it, and wishing people goodbye. Also, another family friend who escaped. She said that when she came out of the building, there were no fire alarms on in the area where she was. There were no fire alarms working, and she said that the fire was in the fire exit and in the stairwell. So I'm quite shocked to hear that. I've also people have been WhatsApping me, telling me that their sons have been around the other side of the building and they've seen people flashing, but this was earlier on, flashing their mobile phones, trying to tell people that they're alive and that they're there. And I think I'd reported to you earlier that I'd heard people calling out for help. So there definitely were people that were trapped inside. I hope they've made it out.
And Sophia, again, just to be clear, these are first-hand reports? You've heard these first-hand?
Yes. Yeah, these are all first-hand reports. Some of it has been by WhatsApp from my sister, who has basically, some of those people have come to her house. So, yeah.
Do you have family and friends in the block?
I had some friends, and they came out of the block, the ones that I know. But I mean, I have a neighbour who I know, that one male member of their family is missing.
Do you know anything about conditions in the block? Obviously, don't speculate, but there have been quite serious allegations made by the what appears to be an action group of local residents, but we don't have in any way at the moment the landlord's response to those.
Yeah, so I live in an estate right opposite this building, and I have, visited this estate all throughout my childhood because I've had friends there, and I basically have seen that basically I know that the elevators, they never used to work very well, but I know that it was refurbished recently. The stairwells apparently have burnt through, but I also just know that the conditions, in this area, the emergency services are obviously doing a stellar job. There are so many of them out here. They're trying their hardest, but they are impeded by the fact that right in front of this building, they have very narrow roads. One side doesn't have like a through road and actually has Kensington Aldridge Academy right in front of it. So I guess I would like to let people know that if they have a child that's going to that school, just not to turn up. It's because of the proximity. I mean, it's less than 100 metres away, I would say, or maybe 200 metres from that school. So that school, it looks like the whole building is going to burn through, but potentially it could damage the secondary school. So that is another possibility. So for people to just be aware.
Sophia, just in case people just joined us, I should say you've just been saying with some certainty you think that people have been calling from inside the building as it is now on their mobiles, saying to family and friends they probably won't make it, that people have been heard calling out for help and flashing their phones to try and indicate where they are. I mean, I realise you're no expert in this kind of thing. From what you're seeing, what are the chances, do you think, with the hydraulic ladders, the platforms that the firefighters have up there, of still getting people out?
I cannot say. The building is burning through. I can't see how there are any more people that are alive in there. If they are still in there and haven't already come out, I can't imagine. But then again, I have been around the building a few times, and each time I heard, but not recently, not within like the last half hour, I was hearing screams of help, help. That's firsthand. I heard it. I even heard it right at the very beginning, because it was pitch black at night. It was about 1:15 when I looked out of the window. But before that, I kept hearing police sirens. And I just heard some popping sounds, and I thought there was shooting going on. So I was looking out of my window to see what was happening, but I was looking down, and I didn't realise to look up. And when I eventually looked up, I was just absolute shock and just horror. And the fear, you can't imagine, because I just knew that I thought it would mean that a lot of people would die, because it's very hard to access that building, and it's a tall building. And the other estates around here, they're not tall buildings in the immediate vicinity. However, they are hard to access by the vehicles, the fire brigades, I would say. And also I've said before, I think, that we don't have fire drills for council estates. We don't have community education about what would we do in the event of a fire. We don't know what the evacuation plan is. I've heard from people that they were told at the beginning by police to stay inside the building. So there's that kind of confusion and, I guess, fear for other residents about what would they do if this happened on their block. And that's really, that's just, makes it worse even.
I should just please, Sophia, do stay on the line, please. The police are saying a number of people are being treated for a range of injuries from the fire, but we have no more details on that. It does seem likely that some of the bangs you were hearing were debris falling or glass exploding. The police and the firefighters were saying that one corner of the building was not alight, which I guess perhaps gives some hope.
I think that would just be I can't understand what they've said there, because the side that wasn't alight, as far as I saw, didn't really have any windows. So I thought I was on that side late. But I've literally been around each side of the building and take photos and videos, and I saw pretty much all of it ablaze at different stages. So I don't know if I can corroborate what they've said, unfortunately. But perhaps now, I'm on one side, perhaps now the opposite corner has gone out, because I can see two sides from where I am, because I'm on like a corner view.
Yeah, everybody, of course, is hoping to hear more from the fire service, but they are, of course, very, very busy. What we do know, Sophia, please stay with us just for a moment, just to recap for people. 27 stories this block, the fire service saying it is alight from the 2nd to the 27th floor, that there are 40 fire engines there at least, 200 plus firefighters wearing breathing apparatus, and as I say, alight from the 2nd to the 27th floor. Sophia, have you been at all to the area where people have been evacuated? Have you managed to talk to anybody there?
I've literally been around every part of this building, and I haven't seen the people that have been evacuated, other than people that have come out to a little bit of a further distance away, like around 500 metres away. So these areas are just like immediately bordering on to the zone that's being cordoned off. And basically, those are the only people I've spoken to. I have literally gone, woven in between and around the building because I know this area very well. I was raised here, and I haven't been able to see people being actively treated on the ground. The only people I saw are people that just made it out at the beginning, or people that midway through have kind of found other people and made themselves known that they are actually a survivor, but they're just kind of obviously were in shock. But I haven't seen any people, for example, with like burns or anything, going towards an ambulance. But there is a very small cul-de-sac, which is not a through road, immediately in front of one side of this building. So I think that a lot might be happening there. That's obviously where the firefighters are. And so there may be a lot going on that we just cannot see.
Safar, thank you so much for coming through to us and for all your very useful information. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think we can speak now to BBC London's Simon Lederman, who is at the scene. Simon, what can you tell us?
What I can tell you is that we've been reporting this story since about 20 to 2 this morning. The first call, we think, went through to the emergency services at about 1:15 when there were reports of a fire at this tower block in the Latimer Road area of town in West London. It's confirmed as Grenfell Tower, 24 stories high. We've estimated from the various eyewitnesses we've spoken to that building contains around 200 flats, so the numbers of people in that building significantly higher. Very early on, it was very clear that this was a major incident. The flames could be seen from many miles away. And the first reports we had from eyewitnesses were talking about scenes that filled them, they were telling us, with sheer horror. This was a building that was on fire from its very base to its very top level. It was a fire that was blaring from all of the flats that they could see. And later on, as this story developed overnight, there were visions of masonry falling off the building, which was obviously also preventing and having some concern for those who were trying to establish an emergency recovery effort of that building. At the moment, the firefighters are trying to do what they can on site. We think 200 firefighters are in attendance, and the A40, which is the main road that goes from the centre of town out west and further along, is currently closed in both directions. Such is the scale of this blaze from the West Cross route, the northern roundabout, towards the Marylebone flyover.
Yeah, Simon, I think the latest report suggesting it may even be 27 stories high, so maybe even more flats and more people than you've estimated, though at least on the slightly comforting side, it does seem many people have been evacuated. We were getting reports, Simon, you may be hearing them too, of people calling from inside the building on their mobiles, suggesting to family and friends they might not make it. Other people calling from the building for help, flashing their phones to try to indicate where they are. Could you have any indications how possible it's going to be to get anyone out who's still inside?
It's a really horrific story. I mean, I'm afraid I'm not on site. I'm speaking to you from the studios at BBC Radio London, where we've had about 2 hours of eyewitness reports from people who are actually there, who've been seeing what's going on. And the two things that struck me were this. One, the sense of concern of the way the streets are laid out in the area. So the two things that they're worried about. One, the narrow aspects of the street. So they were talking about eyewitnesses of firefighters unable to get their appliances through. In some cases, they were eyewitnesses saying that these firefighters had to double back on themselves because they couldn't actually gain access. The second thing is the sheer scale of the fire. I mean, you talk about the eyewitnesses that you've heard from. I think this is right, that we're hearing people are in those buildings, are trying to attract attention, and are alerting people, not just via phone. We've seen it on various social media sites as well, tweets that are going by mentioning flat numbers and the horror that they're going through. And again, the second thing is the sheer scale of this falling masonry seems to be a major issue that may well be preventing the rescue services from doing what they can. 200 firefighters, for those who don't know, this is a major response from the London Fire Service. That is a massive number of people on site. But as you suggest, it's 24 or more stories high. It's a major problem they're tackling with this morning.
And Simon, you may be hearing the same reports, the same suggestions, but I should stress we have not heard yet anything from the landlords of the block. But a local pressure group, what appears to be a local pressure group, the Grenfell Action Group, have been drawing attention in its blog post to what they call dangerous living conditions at this block, allegedly neglect of health and safety legislation, a poor safety record by the landlords. And there are suggestions from them. As I say, they're only allegations. We cannot at the moment be fair and put the other side of this, but allegations that a major fire at this block was averted in 2013 when some residents, they say, experienced power surges allegedly caused by faulty wiring. Do you have any more on that?
One of our eyewitnesses earlier on was speaking about a similar fire that had taken place in that building, and we had another person who called us who wasn't in that block, but they were at a similar block nearby and could see what was happening. And they have been concerned since we had that major fire in a tower block in London some years ago about their own safety when it comes to the way that these fires can take hold. And what seems to be also coming through from a number of people is the problems of the lifts being not necessarily very well maintained, but also in the state of a fire when you wouldn't be using the lifts anyway. The concern has been that the stairwells have been completely taken over by fire. So the method at which the emergency services is going to gain access to those people who are trapped inside is going to be something they, I'm sure, are manically working on. And how that is going to happen, based on what the eyewitness accounts we've received has been, is unclear at this stage.
Yes, so we've had people too saying that the fire was in the fire exits, in the stairwells. Also suggestions, again, only allegations. We cannot confirm one way or another that the fire alarms were not working.
What we heard about the fire alarms was that the fire alarms had been sounding. This was one eyewitness we heard from earlier on in the programme. The fire alarms had been sounding. I can only imagine, and again, this is surmising from my own experiences dealing with these kinds of stories, is that perhaps eventually the fire was affecting the power that was then feeding the fire systems of the building. I can't say that, but the fact that there had been an eyewitness who said the fire alarms were sounding and then they weren't suggests that something during the course of the fire changed their ability to function.
And Simon, we know that the firefighters and police have been moving people back from the block. There's no way of avoiding this horrible thought, because it's going to be in everybody's minds, whether this block is in danger of collapse.
Well, this is what we were hearing earlier on. It's important to remember that if at 1:15, approximately, I think 1:16 was the exact time BST that the emergency services first received a call. The problem is that if this fire has been burning for what then would be over 3 hours long, and the flames, I know that we're seeing flames on the channel that you're reporting on now that are significant all these hours on. We also know that masonry is continuing to fall off the side of that building. Yes, the integrity of that building, from a novice who is not an expert in the way that buildings are constructed, but we've all sadly witnessed buildings such as these tower blocks being alight before. The integrity of those buildings, of that building, must be called into question 3 hours, 15 minutes on from that fire first being reported to the emergency services.
And Simon, as you're saying, we know that a number of people have been taken to the Latimer Community Church or Latimer Christian Centre. Any indications how many people might have got out?
Not yet. The one thing that is really concerning, certainly the reports that we have coming in, and certainly the information that I've managed to gather, is that twofold. One, we have ambulances arriving and not ambulances leaving, and that is incredibly concerning, because you would imagine that ambulances will be heading straight out to hospitals to treat those people who've been injured. And secondly, although there were many people, we heard from a number of eyewitnesses who were seeing people in pyjamas, who were seeing people who looked like they'd just got out of bed. These were not, it seemed, people from Grenfell Tower. It seemed to be local people who were living nearby trying to offer some assistance. So in terms of numbers of those who've actually left the building and have gone to the church hall to get some assistance, I'm afraid I'm not clear on. But it's a concerning picture, because the picture that we're seemingly having from all the eyewitnesses that have called us, there are eyewitnesses who don't live there. There are eyewitnesses who live nearby. They have not left the building. We had one caller who called the programme earlier on who was living nearby, whose aunt lived very, very high up in the building. She had a heart condition. Unfortunately, she was able to leave the building early and earlier, and she was out and she was okay. But that is the only such story that certainly I have heard of this morning.
Well, it's a terrifying scene, as you say, even now, nearly 3.5 hours on. Simon Ledderman from BBC London, thank you so much. I should say that Mayor Sadiq Khan has just declared a major incident here at Grenfell Tower in West Kensington. I think we can speak now to Tim Downey, who lives locally, also been watching the blaze and is on the phone. Tim, what are you seeing? What have you been hearing?
Well, I've pretty much watched it from 2 o'clock from when we first were alerted by just the sheer volume of sirens that were going off and the helicopters that were here. And I've just seen it, just the fire just absolutely rip through it and just engulf the whole building. Like now it's pretty much burnt out, the entire thing. I mean, I've never seen anything like that in all the years I've lived here. Just the scale of it is extraordinary. It's absolutely extraordinary.
We're just seeing there at the moment the weather camera shot, which shows that plume of smoke across West London. Are you getting any indications at all of whether there are people still inside, how many people might still be inside?
None whatsoever. I mean, I'm hearing things from people that there have still been people still trapped inside. I mean, from very early on, I've heard people shouting from very high up. I desperately hope these people manage to get out. But I mean, it just seems so all-consuming, the fire. I don't know how. I mean, I don't even know how the fire services are even beginning to deal with it. It's just, absolutely extraordinary thing.
Indeed, and complicated, we gather, by the debris that's still falling, of course, and the fact that access seems to be so difficult. The narrow streets, hard to get appliances through. Let's come at this from the other way, perhaps. We were trying to calculate how many flats there might be in that building, given it's about 27 stories, maybe 200, maybe more. That means, of course, many more people. You've no indications how many people might have got out, how many people have been evacuated into the Latimer Christian Centre or elsewhere?
No, I mean, so many people have been milling around. I mean, I've seen groups of people who've been taking water and sort of coats and clothes and things like that down to the cordon to be taken by police. So, I mean, nothing definite on how many have got out. You would hope a huge amount, if not everyone, has got out. But it's so incredibly difficult to say because we're being kept back. And as you're saying, the building itself has been covered in sort of panels for a recent refurbishment, and a lot of those have been slipping off and just falling a great deal as soon as the fire hits them. So it's been very difficult to get anywhere near it for anybody at all, let alone people coming out.
Tim, do you know people in there?
I don't. I know some of the people in the other flats in some of the other estates, so consequently they know obviously people that live there as well, but no, thankfully I don't know anyone that's in there.
All right, thank you so much for coming through to us.
No problem.
I think we can speak now to our correspondent Andy Moore, who's been there pretty much since the first call came in to the fire service just about 3.5 hours ago. Andy, what's the latest?
Well, we now know it's been declared a major incident. We've heard that from the Mayor of London. As you can see, the building is still well alight. The fire service tell us it's alight from the 2nd to the 27th floor. You can see just on the left-hand side of the building, you can see that hydraulic platform there, which we don't think is manned, with the hose playing on that corner of the building. About an hour ago, we saw a person briefly come to the window once or twice, just about where that hose is playing. We haven't seen that person since. We believe it was probably a resident. We understand that the fire service have been inside the building using breathing apparatus, so we're hoping that person has been rescued. As to people trapped, people injured, all we have at the moment is information that a number of people have been treated for a range of injuries. In the early stages, the police said 2 people were treated for the effects of breathing in smoke. We now know that there are more injuries than that, but we don't know the extent of them. There are fears, as you can see, debris falling off the building, that it might collapse. People are being pushed back. The fire itself is abating a little, perhaps, simply because a lot of the combustible material has already been burnt. You can see just how blackened and charred the outside of the building is now. We can't see firefighters going into the building. Our view is obscured, as you can see, by a building in front of us. But we have seen hoses playing on the building, sometimes on the right-hand side of the building. So we assume that there are people manning those hoses and that firefighters are very close to the building, though there is the risk of it collapsing and certainly the risk of fiery debris falling on top of them. So firefighters taking enormous risks, presumably to try and rescue people that may be trapped inside.
As you were saying, Andy, we're hearing these horrible stories of people apparently calling from inside the building on their mobiles, apparently saying to their family and friends they may not make it, other people calling out for help or flashing their phones to try and indicate where they are. We have no confirmation of that, but that was coming to us from someone who believed they had it firsthand. And of course, this extra problem that the fire seems to have been in the fire exits in the stairwells, and very hard for the firefighters to get through narrow streets, hard to get their appliances through, and as you say, fiery debris falling on them all the time.
Yes, certainly some of the residents here said that it is a sort of maze of narrow roads, and it is sometimes difficult for the emergency services to get access. As you know, the streets of London are pretty busy anyway, so certainly there's a road below us, and some cars had to be cleared out of the way for the emergency vehicles to get through. We know there are something like 40 fire engines here and 200 firefighters, and we've seen ambulances, lots of ambulances arriving. And we've also had this statement now from the fire brigade. We've had a statement from Assistant Commissioner Dan Daly, and he said firefighters wearing breathing apparatus are working extremely hard in very difficult conditions to tackle this fire. He didn't say whether they were inside the building or not, but you would presume if they had that breathing apparatus, they were inside the building. And he went on to say this is a large and very serious incident, and we have deployed numerous resources and specialist appliances. The fire actually started just before 1 o'clock, and you can see that column of smoke rising into the morning air. It's fortunately there's not a strong wind here at the moment. That would have made the firefighting very much more difficult. And that column of smoke rising almost vertically into the sky and then drifting away. I can see a large grey cloud that will be viewed from anybody in London, and they will be able to see this fire and the results of this fire for miles around.
Andy, we've been trying to calculate, given that it seems to be 27 stories high, how many flats there may be there, and indeed how many people might originally have been inside. Are you hearing anything from local people or from firefighters or police that would indicate a number?
I can't give you a number. As you say, I've heard perhaps 200 flats, perhaps 200 people. These are just estimates, really, of the numbers who would have been inside. You have to remember when this fire started, it was 5 to 1 in the morning. So most people presumably would have been at home in their flats, in bed. So it would have had probably the maximum occupancy rate. There would have been more people in that block of flats than there would be at any other time. So that will obviously be a matter of a lot of concern for the emergency services.
And again, Andy, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention it, but of course we only have one side of these suggestions at the moment. These blog posts from a local pressure group, what appears to be a local pressure group, the Grenfell Action Group, suggesting a major fire at this very tower was only averted in 2013 when some residents spotted power surges, they say caused by faulty wiring, and they say they have been complaining for some time about what they call dangerous living conditions at the block. They say the neglect of health and safety legislation, a poor safety record by the landlords. Obviously, we'd want to hear the landlord's side of that, which we don't have at the moment.
That's right. I understand the tower block is owned by the local authority. I understand also that there was a major repair of the block, that it was refurbished from top to bottom fairly recently, probably since 2013. I haven't got the dates on that, but a lot of work was done on the block. So it may be that some of those concerns dating back to 2013 were addressed in some way, but we will find out about that, no doubt, in the fullness of time.
And Andy, just for people who've only just joined us, we should make clear, because it is going to be on everybody's mind as they look at these pictures, that everybody possible has been moved back from the block. Clearly, the firefighters and the police are concerned that the block may collapse.
Yes, that is a concern. When we arrived, we were slightly closer to the building, and we were pushed back by the police with some urgency. They were concerned that the building might collapse. That's not based on any structural assessment of any sort. It's simply the police exercising maximum caution. They felt it was a possibility. There was certainly fiery ash and debris falling around the tower block, so it made sense to move people as far away as possible. And there must be concerns for the building. You can see it for yourself. The fire has ripped through from top to bottom. We can't see the other side from here, but as far as I could see when we arrived, the fire was raging just as fiercely on the other side of the building. So there must be concerns that the building could collapse. We don't know if it will or not, but of course that is a fear at least.
Yeah, the fire service have been describing it, as I'm sure you've heard, as a light from the 2nd to the 27th floor, though they have talked about one corner not being a light. But as you were saying also, this major concern that the fire appeared to be in the fire exits, in the stairwells. Andy, thank you very much indeed. We'll come back to you, of course. I think we can speak now to Abdel Habawi, who's been watching the blaze, is on the phone now. Abdel, do you live locally?
I live in Wembley, but I drove on the A40 by the building at around 2:30, and I was going towards South London to drop some friends. And I was concerned because the fire was absolutely horrific and scary. And I saw the whole building is in flames from all sides. Very dark black smoke coming out of the building. I heard on the radio, on BBC London radio, a lady who was offering some help, and she gave directions to Latimer Christian Centre. So on my way back from South London, around 3 a.m., 3:30, I decided to go to the Latimer Christian Centre. The roads are blocked. It was not very easy to get through. And people have parked their cars in a very inappropriate way, which raised my concerns that emergency services will not have a proper access.
Abdul, we have been hearing that they've been having problems with the narrow streets anyway. Can I just, if you've been to the centre, do you have a sense of how many people have been evacuated? How many people got out?
No, I've seen a lot of people on the streets, but I've seen the police treating, the paramedics, treating at least 5 to 6 people just outside Latimer Road Station. I had packs of bottled bottles of water in the back of my car, so I carried it with a friend of mine, and we offered it to the policeman, who was very relieved when he received the water, and he went straight away and gave it to those people on the street who apparently being treated either from smoke and I don't know to what extent of treatment they were getting. I've seen a gentleman, a young guy who's maybe 18, 19 years old, and he was in shock, in tears, and apparently his family or family members live in the building, and he was unable to get through to them by phone, or he was hysteric, basically. The police were doing a lot of effort to push everyone back and try to ask them not to come any closer. And I think instead of the people who are there, instead of standing and filming and taking pictures, they can at least offer some help, especially those who live around, by taking someone in, or offering water or snacks or fruits or whatever, because there are a lot of people in the street, and I couldn't get any count, but I can see that paramedics and police are exerting a lot of effort.
Abdel, thank you very much indeed for coming through to us.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think we can speak now live to Stuart, who I believe is a postman and is in the area. Excuse me. Stuart, what can you tell us?
Hi. All right, I was the postman there years ago. I popped down there because I'm local, so I went down with a couple of coats and bottles of water and stuff. I just thought I'd be able to help, but I couldn't actually get close. I ended up being stuck on the A40 on the Northern Roundabout, and I just stayed there for a good hour just watching it, to be honest with you. It's shocking.
It's a horrible scene, isn't it?
Well, I've never seen anything like it. It's actually a light from the bottom to the top, and I can't imagine anyone's got out of it. I just can't imagine it. I mean,
well, just to be clear, though, Stuart, we should say that they have. We know a large group of people are at the local Christian centre, just in case people are wondering about that.
All I can tell you, I mean, I saw bits of the building falling off. I mean, I know it's just been recently refurbished. So I don't know whether it seems to have gone up so quick. From my other people standing by, they said it went up in about 10 minutes, and it's quite astonishing. I mean, that road's been closed for a while as well, so I think the fire engines would have had major trouble getting through. And it's always been tight to get in there anyway. You can always hardly get any cars in there because of the car parks. Now they've got fire engines and loads of them now. I'll never know. But
not made any easier, I'm sure, by burning debris falling from the sky.
No, and I mean, I was from where I was. All you could hear from. I mean, I was sort of, not that far, but you could hear screams from where I was, and it's just unbelievable. It's just to think there's people in there. Somebody said they saw someone jump. I didn't see any of that, but honestly, it's indescribable. It's the worst tragedy in West London's history, I think. Anyway.
It is indeed a terrible scene, and we have had these reports. We can't confirm them, but they seem to be pretty close to first-hand reports that people have been calling from inside the building on their mobiles, suggesting to family and friends they may not make it. Other people calling out for help, flashing their phones to try and indicate where they are. I don't know if you're seeing the same pictures. On our shot at the moment, there is a hydraulic platform up there on the left. We understand that's just spraying water and is unmanned. So we just don't know what the chances are of other people still getting out. The fire service is saying the block is alight from the 2nd to the 27th floor, but one corner of the building may not be alight. I think we've lost Stuart there. We can speak, I think, to Jody Martin, who is also in the area. Jody,
Hello.
Jody, just tell us, I gather you've been involved in some of the rescue work.
Yeah, well, I got there the same time the fire engines got there. I heard the fire engines, but they were struggling to get in because the road is actually blocked off due to gas works on Bramley Road, and it's a bit of a dogleg to get in there, quite tight. So I ran from my apartment through a pedestrianised bit to get to the building. I ran around the building first just to try and see what was going on, because originally the fire was on the east side of the building. And so I had a look at that, and I could see it on the 2nd floor and moving swiftly up to the upper floors. Then the fire engine pulled up. They opened up and started pulling out hoses and stuff. I grabbed an axe and ran around the building looking for a fire escape. No fire escapes that I could see, like obvious on the outside of the building. But what I did notice was there's a bridge connecting an adjacent building on the 2nd floor. So I went up a set of stairs and went in through the window of somebody's apartment, just shouting for anyone. Then got into the corridor. 2 people were in the corridor, and then we worked out which way was the way out. Got them and handed them off to the fire brigade. The fire brigade started coming up the stairs at that point, but they were staying on the 2nd level for quite a long time. I think they were trying to work out the layout of the building. The smoke was quite bad on the 2nd floor, so I then retreated back out the way I came, and then was just screaming at people in the building that were looking out the window, trying to wake people up, telling them, get out of the building, get out of the building. And, and then a officer arrived, a commanding officer from the fire brigade arrived. I explained to him where I could see people that he might be able to get them with the ladders. One was on that actual bridge bit, and actually hoisted the ladder up, and they got somebody out on the 4th floor. And I got the impression that the fire brigade were reluctant to go up any higher than the 4th floor, just because of the carnage of the fire, just that the veracity of it, it's violent. It's just like an inferno. When I was running around the bottom of the building, there was bits of the building falling off all around me. I scalded my shin on a hot piece of metal that had fallen off the building. I was just screaming at people, get out, get out. And they were screaming back at me, we can't, the corridors are full of smoke. And I guess they stayed in because they thought the fire brigade's here. And then as I've been watching and sort of stepping back as the fire's been getting bigger and bigger, I've seen fire brigades inside, because I've seen their flashlights on the inside, but only up until the 4th floor. I don't think they went higher than the 4th floor. I think it would have been impossible to. And then the police eventually came and started asking civilians to move back. So I moved back, handed the axe back to the fire brigade, and then I've just been watching people in their windows flashing with their phones, and then slowly watching those apartments get engulfed in flames and smoke. My opinion that there's going to be a lot of dead people in that building. Just that they couldn't have got out. The second top window, I saw a family of 3 in there, and then slowly I've watched the smoke get worse and worse. They're clambering to the windows. I can see them like trying to wave blankets to try and get oxygen into themselves, and then slowly they're one at a time. They've just not been at the window anymore. Also in the other corner, top corner, her apartment, there's a lady there screaming for help. Her whole apartment's burnt out. Glass is gone. Everything's gone, and she didn't get out. My partner saw someone fall from there. I've seen people on the outside of the building clambering around. I saw a lady on the middle section of the window holding her toddler outside, screaming for help. It's a disaster, and my opinion is it's tens of casualties, if not up to 100. It's just no way people could have got out of there past the 4th floor. It was just the smoke was too thick. I experienced it myself. All my clothes smell of smoke now. My skin smells of smoke, and I only was on the 2nd floor very, very briefly. And as I was talking to the people from the outside of the building, they were saying, we can't get out. The smoke's too thick. And I guess from their perspective, they're looking at all the fire brigade downstairs going, it's all right, they'll put the fire out. But then from my perspective, from the outside of the building, one whole side of the building is on fire, and it's slowly creeping around the building. And that's what I've just been witnessing, just apartment of people after apartment of people slowly at the windows, waving, screaming for help, and then the flames just slowly coming around, the smoke coming around, and then I'm looking at it now. It's engulfed in flames. The whole building's engulfed in flames. There's one small section up until about the 5th floor on the west side of the building that isn't, but it's covered in smoke. The rest of the building is just, it's gone. It's gone.
Jody, that's a fantastically distressing thing to be anywhere near. It's bad enough just looking at it from here. It sounds like you did a top job, man, more than many of us would have had the guts to do. Were you able to get any kind of estimate in the midst of all that about how many people might still be inside, or coming at that from the other way, how many people might have escaped at least?
I only saw 7 people come out myself, and I was downstairs in the foyer for the first 40 minutes of this. I saw an old lady and an old man come out. And then since then, I've seen people walking down the street with bags, so that makes me think that a few people got out, but not the amount that you'd expect to see if there was fire alarms or something in the building. So when I was in the building, there was no fire alarms going off, so people could have still been sleeping or whatnot. We were actually banging on doors and screaming at windows and screaming up the building. One of the firemen had a speaker, like one of the speaker phones, screaming at the building, telling people if they can make their way to the stairs, do so. Originally, they said they're safer. They told my friend they're safer in their apartments, but when the fire brigade actually looked around the other side of the building, I think they quickly changed their mind on that, and they started making the announcements up the building. If you can make your way to the fire escapes, please do so in a timely manner. And here we are. The building's cracking. There's loud, like, snapping and cracking. I can see straight through the building on the edges. So before they used to have windows there, and now you can see straight throughout the other side. So everything's been burnt out. And look, I wouldn't have had the guts to go up any further than the second floor. It was just too full of smoke, and even with great breathing apparatus and all that, the flames are so big. And I think the health and safety of the fire brigade as well would have been, look, just stand back. And there was, by the time, after 40 minutes, there was probably 60 fire officers, but most of them on the outside of the building, in the foyer. I don't think many wanted to go inside, and it wouldn't have been safe to do so.
Jody, after all you've been through, man, after all you've been through and all you've done, thank you so much for giving us your time. Jody Martin there.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
There'll be much more to come on this, of course, this major incident in West London. The Mayor of London has just declared a major incident. This is the Grenfell Tower, alight now for almost 4 hours, we think, in West London. More information for you anytime on the BBC website. We'll be back.